All right, Marty, random thoughts. I'm going to start. I'm going to bash the NCAA again. That seems to be a theme. The mouthpiece rule. And I texted you because you're the guru for college sports as far as I'm concerned. And I'm watching games last weekend, and defensive backs in particular, mouthpieces are flipping around, flying around their helmets. They don't even try to hide it. Last night, the Alabama defensive back, number 1, had a neon green mouthpiece. And so anybody and their brother, not even on TV in that stadium, could see it flipping around. Never put it in his mouth, but he's not the only one. Lots of them not. Now, I asked you, and you told me what the penalty is. It should cost the team a timeout. And then once they're out of timeouts, I think it's a 5-yard delay game penalty. Basically.
Yep.
I've never seen one called. Have you?
I have not.
Okay, so I want the NCAA to tell us why it's not called. Now, safety is the first thing. You would think this day and age.
With concussions, yes.
Absolutely. And the focus on safety, athletic trainers on the sideline at all levels, et cetera, that this is a penalty. Now, you know what? If you're not going to call a penalty every time a player untucks his shirt, I don't care. This is a safety thing. And you've got it in the rule book, and it's blatantly. I'm not talking about Division III teams in the fourth quarter of a blowout, and nobody sees it. This is national TV. I checked, Marty. There were like 8 games on TV last night between 7 o'clock and midnight. I tuned into all 8 games until I saw a mouthpiece out of somebody's mouth during the play. And so this is a rampant thing. Now, again, a lot of the players have them in. But again, if it's going to be a rule, why is it not being enforced? My cousin, I was texting with my cousin. He's a big sports fan. He said, why do you care? I said, well, you're right. I shouldn't care. But why is it a rule then? If you're going to have a rule, enforce the rule. If you're not going to enforce it, take the rule out of the rule book. It's that simple. I want to hear from a referee. Refs, why aren't you? Have you been told not to call this? Because none of them do. You would think somebody would do it because they'd make the headlines.
Right.
First ever mouthpiece penalty call. Team loses a timeout. I just don't get it. I don't get it. And I tweeted out and I tagged the NCAA.
Yep.
I just want an answer. Why isn't it followed? Why isn't a rule that is so easily enforceable? And I'm even fine if right before the play starts, you point to the player and tell them to get their mouthpiece in their helmet.
Yes.
I don't care what you do. Safety aside, it's a rule. Why isn't it enforced like all the other rules that you enforce?
Agreed.
Why isn't it enforced? And then add on to it that it could prevent a concussion.
Yeah.
Why aren't you doing it?
And it's funny you mentioned defensive backs, because a lot of times, as people know, when the receiver comes up to the line, they'll ask the referee, am I lined up correctly in regards to the line of scrimmage? The receiver will actually turn with it hanging 5 inches out of his helmet, and the referee will say, yeah, you're fine. And nothing happens. I've wondered the same thing.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that drives me nuts.
Yep.
So now I'm going to go to another thing that's going to drive me nuts soon. And that is the Guardian caps. These are the helmet. They're made of foam. They go over top of the helmet. And this year they were mandated for the first time for the NFL. Every practice during the season, training camp, mini camp, during season practices, anytime there's contact in the NFL outside of a game, players are required to wear those. Now, I looked it up because there was a tweet this week from the Hodgson, not Hodgson, from the Votech, and I saved it here somewhere. I can't remember where, but there was a tweet from the Votech schools, and this is it. Excited to announce that going forward, Hodgson football and all schools in Newcastle County Votech will be wearing Guardian caps during practice. Becomes the first district in the state to give all football players access to the caps. Guardian caps reduce concussions and head injuries by over 60%. Now, that's from the Guardian website. My question is, the NFHS has approved these for gameplay. For the first time this year, there are some high schools in Minnesota who are using them. Now, there's a couple things. One is they are cost prohibitive. They cost $70 a unit. Now, it's not like shot clocks, though, where if one does it, nobody else can do it, or you know what I mean? If a kid wants to wear it or a parent wants their kid to wear it, they should be able to wear these in the game. It's almost like, the old joke of, well, why don't they make the whole airplane out of the stuff they make the black box out of? Because that seems to survive anything. So if this reduces concussions by 60%, why are we not using them in gameplay? Now, this isn't a shot at DIAA or NFA. Nobody. NFHS has approved this for use across all high schools. Now, I don't know if DIAA had to specifically approve it, but if it's something that reduces head injuries, it should be considered. Now, I know there was an NFL executive this week who said he'd like to see them used in games. And another owner came out and said, and this is the NFL, there's too much money in helmet marketing to cover it up with these things. It would cost too much money because you got the star of the Cowboys, the Eagles, all this stuff. Now you put this black foam thing over top of it. I'm sure they could work around that. But for high school players, if this is approved and they're using it every day in practice because it reduces concussions, then start using it in games.
Yeah.
I was watching the Delaware State Army game yesterday. I got caught up in watching that because there's a couple of Delaware kids that are on Delaware State. And the quarterback, Aaron Angelos for Delaware State, took a Tua Tagovailoa style hit where he was ripped around and thrown headfirst into the ground. And he didn't get up for a couple minutes. And then he jogged off the field. I turned the channel to watch a game for a couple minutes and turned back, and he's back in the game. And less than 5 minutes later, he gets spun around and driven into the ground again, and he wasn't moving. And these injuries, these are going to happen over and over and over. And if there's a tool out there that will help, it's not going to prevent anything, but it could reduce the risks of this, then by all means use it. Yes, they're garish looking. They're not the most stylish things in the world. But at this point, do we even care? I mean, let's go for safety first along your line of the mouthpieces. And I believe the mouthpiece, the reason it's in there in the first place is to keep kids from biting their tongues when they take these big hits and stuff. So, I love Newcastle County VOTEC. Congratulations. This is an awesome step, and I'm thrilled to see you guys doing it. Now to the DIAA, take a look into it and see about approving this for use in all Delaware high school games. And if kids want to use it, let them go ahead and use it.
Well, and I'd be interested if the DIAA has to approve it, since it's an NFHS approved piece
I wondered that too. Yeah, I wondered that too.
Yeah, and we'll try to look into that more. Now, I am going to tell you, I talked to Dave Collins about this, Hodson coach, obviously part of the VOTEC school that did this, and his comment was that in his experience, which is 20 plus years as a coach, more as a player, the majority of concussions happen at practice because of the constant pounding for where a kid is engaged in practice for 2+ hours versus a game where they might tackle somebody once every 15 minutes. What what I'm trying to say. Doesn't mean he was against it or anything like that, but he brought up that point. And my rebuttal to that, and I think he would agree, is still, if it's going to further protect my kid who's on the football field during a game, who may only get hit once, but that one hit could be a concussion that could have been prevented, A, with a mouthpiece in his mouth, and B, with this shell or whatever it is,
the Guardian
cap. My question to you, Marty, and you might not know, is it a heavy cap?
It is not.
Okay.
It's not. It does not. The players at Eagles camp were interviewed about it and said most of them didn't notice it at all once they started playing. It doesn't add much weight. And a lot of them said, look, it's garish looking, but a lot of them felt a lot more comfortable wearing it because of the accidental hit you might get in training camp from a player. A lot of times teams like to go a little less on themselves, obviously. But yeah, if it's anything that could be of help. And again, I know it's cost prohibitive, but for the people that can afford it or the schools that can afford it, like the VOTEC district, which again, I'm absolutely thrilled. I think it's amazing they were able to get these caps and get them out to all the VOTEC schools. That's incredible. So hats off to them. No pun intended, because we like the hats to be on them. So yeah, if somebody out there knows more about this and can email us or text us about it, and if anyone out there from the DIAA is listening, you can let us know whether this is something that has to be approved, because it already is approved by the NFHS.
And if anybody wants a list of things we could cut back on in education, money-wise, to help afford this, talk to me. I got a long list for you.
I was going to say, I'll send them right to you, pal. I know you got stuff.
Where we're spending money where I don't think we need to. But all right, our random thoughts. Mouthpiece is a rule, but a rule that's not followed, and a possible cap that might prevent further concussions. Is that going to be a future, especially in high school sports? there's no logo, there's a logo on a helmet, but you're not advertising on a helmet. So anyway, all right, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Special thanks to our sponsors, Grain Restaurant, 5 locations throughout Delaware, the Marticelli Restaurant Group, 3 locations, 2 in Newcastle County, 1 in Elkton, Chesapeake City, Maryland, I should say. Diamond Hill Incorporated, Mary Kate Johnston with Remax Associates, and Dan Rigby, author of the Win the Day Planner, and of course, the presenting sponsor of the podcast, websitesforsports.com. That's the number 4, websitesforsports.com. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at DELHS Football and Facebook at the DELHS Football Pod. And please like and share our podcast to help us spread the word about the wonderful sport of high school football here in Delaware. Until next time, for Marty Sheehan, I'm John Buzby. Thanks for listening. Have a great sports week.